Today, I will be looking at the most bizarre and shocking command of Jesus. A command so extreme that it is often used as evidence that you cannot really take anything that Jesus said literally. However, I am also going to show you that there is no other way that the command can be taken except literally. It makes perfect sense when we stop being shocked and when we listen rationally to what it is saying. The command comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, verses 8 and 9. If your hand or foot causes you to sin, chop it off and throw it away. You would be better off to go into life crippled or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into the fire that never goes out. If your eye causes you to sin, poke it out and get rid of it. You would be better off to go into life with only 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fires of hell. Now, I don't know of anyone who has ever cut their hand off or gouged their eye out in response to this teaching, although I have heard that there are such people in some mental institutions. So the natural conclusion is that only a crazy person would take this command literally. But first, let us consider a couple of real-life illustrations. In 2003, rock climber Aaron Ralston was trapped in a deep chasm in the Utah desert after having dislodged a boulder that fell on his hand and forearm. For 5 days, he struggled to get his arm loose, with only a bottle of water to keep himself alive. His hand was already starting to decompose when he finally got the courage to literally break the 2 bones in his forearm and then cut through the flesh to free himself from the rock. Was Ralston crazy? Was he misguided? Or did he do the most logical thing one could possibly do under the circumstances? Now consider a second illustration. In hospitals around the world, every week, if not every day, surgeons cut flesh, muscles, bones, limbs, even organs out of otherwise healthy people in order to free the rest of their bodies from threats such as cancer, gangrene, or other infections. Are the surgeons crazy? Are they fanatics? Have they gone too far? Obviously, in both of these illustrations, what was done made perfect sense. What was done was extreme, but only when you ignore the greater severity of what would have happened if they had not cut away the offending body parts. You see, what Jesus said is only extreme when we leave out what it really means to live forever with Him or to be punished forever in hell. You and I may differ on exactly what heaven and hell mean in literal terms, but if the consequences are not more serious than the consequences of removing an offending limb or organ, each of which could probably be sacrificed without even the loss of life, if we have so little faith in the idea of an afterlife, then let's be honest about it. All our talk about heaven is in reality just a fairy tale. Our heaven is just wishful thinking, and hell is just a make-believe horror story. All that really matters is our temporal life, here and now. The rest is fantasy. Isn't that what our actions indicate? See, this is the choice that every one of us has to make. We can pursue success, pleasure, popularity, comfort right now, possibly for as long as 80 or 90 years. Or we can risk it all on a far more wonderful life, forever with God. Which are you going to choose? You can't have it both ways. It's not the way Jesus taught it. Unless you really believe that there is a God, that Jesus is His Son, and that what Jesus said is the absolute truth as revealed to us by our Creator, you will always end up choosing the easier option. Now, let's take a closer look at what it would mean in practical terms if we were to take Jesus literally and what He said about cutting off our hand, our foot, or our eye if they cause us to sin. I once put a very sharp jackknife in my pocket with the intention of taking that command literally. If my hand, or my foot, or my eye caused me to sin that day, I was going to cut them off, literally. Imagine yourself in the same situation. Would you live differently to the way you live now? You see, the entire church world has been steeped in the kind of reasoning that says, don't worry about it. Nobody's perfect. God will overlook that. We all sin, every day. The main thing is that God will always be there to forgive you, unconditionally. Well, it's true that no one's perfect, but you wouldn't believe how close to perfect you can get when you've got a pocket knife sitting there. When you're thinking about saying goodbye to your eye or your foot or your hand. You better believe I was totally on guard against any hint of sin for as long as that knife was there in my pocket. Now, as it happened, by the end of the day, I came to understand something else. It wasn't really my hand, or my eye, or my foot that was going to cause me to sin. It was my heart. My lackadaisical attitude towards sin in general. That's where the sinfulness comes from. What I really needed to do was to get a heart transplant, or perhaps a brain transplant. Just the thought of losing an organ as a result of a single sin was enough to change my thinking about sin. I could see that in God's eyes, sin is not to be trifled with. I was transformed through the renewing of my mind, and it all came from taking Jesus seriously with this one shocking command. These days, I don't carry a pocket knife around with me anymore. But I probably should, because I have so often forgotten the lesson I learned that day, and I have slipped back into a slack attitude toward selfishness, toward impatience, toward pride. Can you see what I'm saying about this command of Jesus? He wants us to take drastic steps to stop ourselves from sinning, even to the point of cutting off a limb or gouging out an eyeball if necessary. It's a wonderful command, and one that needs to be taken more seriously by virtually all of us. You wouldn't believe some of the dumb arguments that people give in response to the various teachings that have been covered in these videos. What those arguments show, more than anything else, is that these people don't give a flip about what Jesus says or thinks. For all their religiosity and self-righteousness, they come across more as atheists, as though Jesus never existed and his teachings are nothing but rubbish. They think that if they can just find something wrong with me, it will make the truth go away. You're not very loving, they say. You're probably not even doing those things yourself. Things were different in Jesus' time. My pastor says that the Greek means something different to what the translators said it means. You know, that kind of stuff. Do you realize, people, what the issues are here? We are, all of us, trapped down in the bottom of a cold, damp chasm, slowly starving to death and dying of thirst. That chasm is the world we live in, and it includes our religious games as well. Death is all around us, and Jesus says, "Get your priorities right. Take up your cross and follow me out of there. If you will lose your life now, you can find it with me out there. Leave it all and discover eternal life." The other option, of course, is to stay there, with the dying crowds on their way to hell. Stay there for a few more days, minimizing your discomfort by doing nothing, until doctrinal gangrene, spiritual starvation, or thirst for the words of God literally takes your spiritual life away and destroys your soul. It's your choice, brothers and sisters. Every time you hear another one of the teachings of Jesus, as you've heard in this video, God is giving you one more chance to make a choice. The narrow way that leads to life, or the broad way that leads to death. This is not a choice that should be made just because of a soppy, emotional song on a church organ, or a rush of people from all corners of the auditorium to sweep you toward the altar at the front of the church, or even a loving arm around your shoulders begging you to make the right decision. This is a choice that you have to make in the face of all opposition, in the blinding light of day, in full knowledge that it is going to cost you everything. But if you can make it now, I can guarantee that God is going to honor that choice and make note of it in his eternal book of life. Don't put it off. This is the real thing, listeners, not some cheap counterfeit. And you alone have the key. what are you going to do with it?